Hello, welcome to the live stream. It's a quiet in the chat today. Hopefully, some folks are actually coming in. All right, there we go. We have at least one person that's joined. So I barely advertised the stream this week because I just spent the past day and change on a whirlwind 27-hour trip down to San Jose to see some fabulous skating at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. I went to watch the ice free dance, and I also got to watch some practice of our own quad god. But I mainly was down there because I went to check out ice skates. So I have my lovely over 20 years old skates behind me, and we're gonna make this economics and finance related because this is probably one of the most expensive personal purchases I'm going to make this year. I am absolutely absolutely going to break down some of the finances of this, but I think that figure skating custom skates are really fascinating as a kind of microeconomy. You know how we talked about I think it was like a year and a half ago, I did a live stream all about the microeconomics of the small, tiny cottage industry that exists around planners and kind of what that field looks like. I have more knowledge about this than most people probably do. I still have way less knowledge than certain people do about the kind of economics of custom figure skates. So I thought we would talk a little bit about, I'm happy to talk about my own personal decision to decide to invest in this, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about what happens when you have something that is not only a niche market, like the number of people that need high level custom figure skates. This is a small sport. Some would even say it's a dying sport, if you believe certain narratives in figure skating. But additionally, this is these are handmade by folks that have to essentially apprentice on from other people. There is a lot of skill that goes into this. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about it and how the pricing works, including coming down to the economics of locating your manufacturing in the economics of agglomeration, which is essentially what happens when you get a lot of similarly typed businesses around an area. And we can talk about what it looks like to have a custom skate factory in Nashville versus the Bay Area. So yeah, I think there's a lot to say. Hi from Las Vegas. Rachel says hi. Mystery of the Maynard says hi. Newbold One says hello. Sorry, I was an Aaron stream. I mean, don't apologize for being an Aaron stream. David Shansky says you came back according to Swarm from SJO instead of SJC. How is Costa Rica? Oh, that might have been an error on the part of the venue I checked into. Mystery the Maynard says, seeing the price of those skates makes me feel better about the price of armor. I will say that, I feel like I do this absolutely expensive hobby, and I try to do it in the cheapest way possible. But there's a lot of other people, especially in, the historical reenactment costuming community, in other sports, particularly winter sports, which tend to be very expensive, that keep being that doesn't even surprise me you spend so much money. So, do your new skates come with knee pads? Asking for Tanya. You really can't skate the way I skate with knee pads on. It totally restricts your movement, but yes. Eric says, I know those skates cost less than a certain laser cutter engraver someone I was watching on YouTube was considering buying. So this was the thing. I went away for 25 hours to go look and contemplate how many thousands of dollars I was going to spend on ice skates. And Aaron was like, I want to spend $3,000 on a new laser cutter engraver. We are building a triplex right now. No one is allowed to do this. So I There was a lot to sum up. I took a fair amount of video, and I'm hoping to do it into like an edited video when I like make my final decision. But since I'm doing the live stream on this because I couldn't think about anything else, frankly, I got this hot tip from Aaron of all folks to use my iPhone memory that it created out of an album as a way of kind of summing things up. So we are gonna do that. So, I went down first to the Avanta Skate Labs, which are folks mainly run by Will, who are, interestingly, actually the folks that a lot of the folks in the same processes that were involved in making the skates behind me. I'll talk a little bit more about that. This was the Shop Cat at Avanta Skate Labs. This is out in Hayward, California. Those are all the lasts, which are what they shape the skates around. And then those are the casts that they make the lasts out of. This was a 1930s place where 1930s like staircase that I got fitted on. And this is what the process of getting a cast made looks like. And this is how different my feet are. So yes, it's just essentially a very quick slideshow. I did just put pictures of my feet on the internet, so you know. And this is looking through all the different leather options available from Avanta. So this was a special trip that I took out, led there by my friend Joey, who lives in Palo Alto. But then the next day, I went to the SAP Center in San Jose. This is what it looks like inside. This is what kind of concerns me. It was weirdly empty, including actually for the championship free dance events, which really kind of bummed me out. I tried on these Adayas, which are very commonly used, but otherwise I got, and they don't do custom boots. And then otherwise I got traced and looked at a bunch of different vendors. So I can kind of sum up the history of these vendors and what I was looking for. That was a very whirlwind slideshow, but a slideshow, yes. Cute B-roll. The kitty is very cute. I actually got warned about the kitty on the figure skating Reddit before I went. They said the cat, the shop cat, does not know what he wants. He pretends to be affectionate, but he might like nip you. And it was true. He does like to play little games where he acts like he wants pets, but then he kind of want to play with it. Okay, so let's talk about why I'm getting custom figure skates. Okay, what's wrong with these boots? I mean, besides being aesthetically not pretty, 20 years is an extremely long time for figure skating boots. They should not have this much flex in them. This is an unreasonable amount of flex. They are very much broken down. In addition, you can see like the stitching is coming out of the tops open up. This is no fault of the folks that made this. I've had these way too long. And then, so you can actually see on the bottom, I probably won't be able to accurately get it on camera, but there's some tracings on the leather. I could maybe use the overhead camera. There's some tracings on the leather and it actually says my name and the month and the year. So these were made December in 2002. They still fit me great. However, I essentially would have to get them rebuilt back up again if I wanted to, you know, for example, put a different blade on them, because the way that these skates are made, every single part of them is leather. The heel is a bunch of different layers of leather. This is leather, and the leather is very beat up, so I need essentially a new sole. And then this is just layers upon layers of leather. And then the tongue is leather on the outside, and then it's a open cell foam here and some wool. And yes, I am a vegan and I have leather figure skates. At the time that I got these, there was literally no synthetic options for figure skates. There are now some synthetic options for figure skates, but I'm not going to get into debate about the ethics of leather, so we're just going to move on from that. And what I will say is I don't necessarily want to switch to an entirely new material in my ice skates. And the reason this is a very important piece of equipment for my sport. And while I would like to take advantage of some of the very cool upgrades, this skate is it's probably about 60% heavier than any modern skate, even that's made with the full leather construction, because a lot of advances have been made in the skates that both like reduce injury, reduce weight, improve performance of various types. There are now synthetic brands. Those kind of happened during the 15 years that I was off in skating. Most of the synthetics also have a bunch of like carbon fiber in them, and essentially to get the stiffness that you want to get out, while also having kind of the flexibility that you need for all the toe bends and everything. I do not know if I would be able to adjust to that new type. Additionally, most of the brands that do the heavily synthetic skates, they don't do custom skates, and because of that, as I discovered being fit by a ton of different brands, there's no hope for me getting stock boots. So a stock boot would be just like when you buy shoes, right? Usually you're not getting custom shoes, you're buying like a standard size. There's a little bit more range of ability and stock options in skating boots, because you need a very like pretty snug fit on all different parts of your skate. Also, figure skaters tend to have really bad feet because of these very tough boots that we wear on our feet. So, you can get like width customized and stuff like that. And then there's a bunch of different things that they can do on the stock boots or semi-customs to try to make them fit your feet better. Most of the skates, you can throw them in an oven, and then like punch out the leather or the synthetics and kind of adjust them to fit your feet better. However, as I talked to several of the manufacturers about, they were all like, I'm willing to take people's money, but I try to talk people out of customs if they don't really need customs and they just like want to say they have custom skates. But looking at your feet, because I've never had so many people look at my feet in a 24-hour period. Because I got measured. I can show you what the measuring looks like by everybody, which is like tracing and everything. Everybody agrees. I have very challenging to fit feet, and there's just no stock options for me. So, David says, I have that problem with shoes in general. I always have to mail order. No one has any selection in my size. Yeah, I mean, one of the things after they did all the measurements and tracings of my feet, standing up, sitting down, everything, one of the fitters, he asked what my street shoe size, and I said, I'm like a 39-40. And he was like, wow, I don't believe that. And it's because I end up getting a much bigger shoe size than probably the length of my foot would necessitate, because my feet are so wide, because I have bunions and bone spurs and a really, really narrow Achilles. So I've got a lot of issues, and shoes just never really fit me, which is why I hate to shop. I'm sorry if you've answered this before, but if you have difficulty to fit, do you also get custom shoes? No, I just blow out the sides of my shoes. It's way too expensive to get custom shoes. So, I just avoid getting them. So yeah. The wear marks look like camouflage, except they're not camouflage on ice, on wet ice. So let's talk a little bit about these skates and how that relates to the current skating industry. So these skates were made in Jamaica, New York by the Klingbeil factory. And when I walked into the Avanta skate factory lab in Hayward, California on Friday, and showed them these skates, Will, who runs that company and makes a lot of the skates there, Will worked at Klingbeil, and at the time he was in his early 20s, I would say, when he did these skates. But he was able to pull out the insole of my skate and see his handwriting marked on the end of it, like with that. And then he was able to go through each part of the skate and be able to tell from markings on the leather, like the way that the stitching is done on the bottom, You can see all those like little, they make a little flower on the bottom. One person had like a more pointy method, and all of that. He was able to tell who made every single part of my skate. So Will would be he is one of the options. It would make my skate again. What is important to know about Klingbeil? So the founder of Klingbeil, or at least like the owner at the time, when I got these skates, his son took the company over, and then his son kind of sold the company, and it was a mix of both boot, like shoe manufacturing, as well as skating manufacturing. But the people that were really passionate about ice skates kind of decided, when one of the people died involved with it, and then another person moved on from the company, they kind of decided that they wanted to focus just on the skates. They didn't really want to be involved with Klingbeil as a company, doing, being like just part of skates. They wanted to work for a fully custom skate company. So together, they essentially founded the Avanta Skate Lab. Avanta Skate Lab has moved around. So it was originally based in Nashville with Bill Favre, and then Will was sort of like the principal designer there. Bill was like the president, I believe. And the thing about Nashville as a location for a custom skating company is a couple things. One, they actually have like a pretty big like leather goods and shoe manufacturing industry there, because of kind of Nashville cowboys, that sort of thing. Like cowboy boots was a big thing there. A lot of that industry has moved overseas or kind of died out, but that was initially one of the ideas with moving it from Jamaica, Queens to moving it to Nashville. I think I'm getting all these details right. But one of the downsides of being located there, and then the other upside is that cost of living is a lot cheaper in Nashville. And there is a skating community. There's like the Scott Hamilton Skating Academy there. There is like a group of skaters there. There's elite skaters trained there. But there's a much bigger skating community out in the Bay Area, California, and they essentially decided to kind of move Avanta out to Hayward, California, as an option to kind of have the ability to be more involved in a skating community. Because once again, this is a very niche kind of business, right? Making custom figure skates for like making custom equipment for a sport that is already pretty much a minority sport. Having it be involved in a community is really important. Will essentially like runs and owns the company now. And then one of the other people who was involved, Bill, kind of stayed in Nashville, and he bought one of the other main skate manufacturer companies, SP Terry. So George, who was SP Terry, Spiteri, that's his last name, but he was ready to retire. So he wanted to move the company out so that he could like kind of chill out, move it out to Tennessee. But it got taken over by Bill, who's an Olympic figure skater and had been involved in Avanta from the beginning. And he took it over. I think I'm getting all of this history correct. But all this boils down to all the people that were involved in making my skates in one way or the other, or had the knowledge of making my skates. They all are essentially at different companies now, but quite a few of them have now passed on unfortunately, too. Making custom skates and custom shoes in general, and like handmade manufacturing, especially in the US, for these kind of products is like very much the people that are left that understand what to do about it, and like how to do it and have the skills to do it. There are not that many of them. Will was saying, he's been doing this now for over 25 years, and he was a baby when he started doing it. And he's like, I think he's 44 now. And he's like, yeah, the other guys that work with me think I'm a baby still because and that I haven't been doing this very long, because the age of the people that have been making these kinds of skates for this long is really smaller. So when I left the sport, something that happened to figure skates, where there was a lot of pressure put on figuring out how we could reduce a lot of the injuries that skaters were seeing. One of the problems was a lot of the ways that skates were being manufactured hadn't really changed in a very long time, but the type of technical skill that especially freestyle skaters were doing was really advancing. So, in order to make the boots more stiff, they were just adding essentially more and more stuff to the outside of them to make them really stiff. But skaters were getting two main kind of injuries from partially driven by the boot and the inability to kind of do the knee bend that you need in order to get the stiffness, which was Achilles injuries and hip injuries. It wasn't entirely down due to the skates. However, there was a lot of pressure being put on skates to sort of develop better patents, come up with better technology in order to improve the way that skates were being made so that skaters, as they were doing triples and quads, were going to be injuring themselves less related to like foot position and stiffness of the boot versus knee and ankle bend. So, the there was a Italian brand called Adea that now is one of the most dominant skate brands out there. That's the one that I mentioned that doesn't have any custom skates, that essentially completely changed the way that skates were being made. They're synthetic. They have a carbon fiber in it. The padding of it is essentially just like layers of fiber paper, but they work really well for a lot of skaters, but they really rethought the way that skates were being made because we were, like I said, very focused on these old leather boots and making incremental changes to the ways that these were designed. So Adea came out. There are now a couple other brands that are trying to mimic like kind of the Adea model, including one that does full custom skates. They're called Ara. And they are a skate brand that they're very new and they essentially do full customs, but they do their full customs based on the same kind of technology as Adea, which, as I mentioned, only does stock boots. So where are we at? Where we're at right now is that we've got SB Terry out in Nashville. That is, the company was recently taken over, and it's actually outside of Nashville. It's in a small town. They have like a factory there where they've bought all this old equipment to manufacture, and they are focused on essentially kind of the most of the same sort of technology with some small patent improvements. And George, the original founder of SB Terry's, George Spiteri, he's, trying to retire, to live in a more low-key life, not constantly producing. So he's just a kind of consultant on the brand, and he sold it off. And then Bill, who knows quite a lot about skates, is doing it. This is what's very unique about this industry. So we've got Avanta. We also have Harlech, which are also founded by some of the people that also make skates in the same way as Klingbeil. Harlech is also, I believe, South Bay area, but California. It's out in California. And Harlech also does only custom skates, and they're mostly in the leather hand-built model. One of the things was that the pandemic hit, especially these really small niche businesses, very hard in the custom skate manufacturing world because skating was paused. Like rinks were closed. I didn't get a skate for like 8+ months here. Competitions were paused. The Olympics were pushed back. And because of that, a lot of orders were really stalled. So some of the smaller companies, Harlech included, they couldn't keep on their employees through the pandemic, which means that now catching up on orders, a lot of them are really far behind. There's also a lot of supply chain issues. Some of the suppliers for these boots, like the parts that they need, the particular kinds of leather that they need, folks that manufacture heels. Avanta makes their heels by hand. SB Terry hires it out. All of that kind of work means that a lot of these small skate manufacturers have had a lot of trouble with, fulfilling orders like in a timely manner. They've had a lot of stress. And then the last part, prices have had to go up a lot because they have had all of these costs going on. They, for a while, had lower orders. I think a lot of them have really recovered. Avanta and Hayward, they're, a lot of people really believe in what they do. I think people believe in all these small skate manufacturers. But a lot of skaters rallied around Avanta to help keep them open so that the, employees wouldn't have to leave by pre-buying skates, putting in deposits on custom skis, even when maybe they weren't in the market for it. I think there was also a GoFundMe for it. But Harlech was not able to keep on some of the employees. So right now they're like over a year out for custom skates because there's like one or maybe two people that are just pushing boots out right now, because this is a artisan skill. There were so many tiny machines involved in making this process. And then there's a couple other manufacturers of skates, and these names you might have heard of even if you're not a skater. So there is Rydell, which a lot of people know. They make roller skates. Apparently they made or make bowling shoes as well. And they're more in the stock boot. Like they make large scale stock boots. They make a lot of the rental skates that are used by rinks. But they also do have a custom line. There's also Jackson's, which make predominantly, they're very into the hockey skates. However, they do have a line of figure skates. A lot of people do use Jackson's, and they do have the option for customs, but they're not like a custom focused company, I would say. I think they're the biggest right now in the skate manufacturers in the world, but remember they have hockey and figure skates. And then they also do quads, roller skates. And did I miss any of the big skate brands? Oh, and then there's also Graf, which is out of Switzerland. They were at the US Nationals. They had their US rep as well as they had the two owners. The Grafs come out from Switzerland as well. They Graf boots are much more common in Europe, but they are still a thing that people use here. They are mostly made using kind of the traditional leather version, but they do focus more on stock boots and not custom boots. And then there's Resport, which is very popular in Europe. They were at US Nationals. They really, they're like mostly kind of a lower market boot. And as far as I understand, they didn't have any custom options. They only had like semi-customs. And so they weren't a fit for me. So I didn't really look at that. Okay, so there is so many questions, and I'm going to kind of talk about all of this. I have spent many hours with a podiatrist because the big skating community should be in California, because we all know all the snow and ice California gets. What you really need is a high income population to do figure skating as a sport, and that's why it's in California. I mean, what? My problem is my toe box is wide and my baby toe is the same height as my big toe. My feet have no slope at all, like a cat's paw. Inserts don't help. Yeah, Aaron's foot is like a box, like similar with no slope. So my feet are radically different. One of them has a very steep slope, the other less, making it even harder to fit my feet. So, yeah. Admirable dedication and skill. Like there are a few lineages under an apprenticeship system. Yeah, it's really fascinating to kind of see how little the skill has really been passed on and how long it kind of takes to be really good at it. One thing I want to say about all of the people, and I'll say guys as a gendered term in this case, because all of the manufacturers I talked to were men, they all have a ton of mutual respect for one another, and they're very respectful. They're very gentlemanly about how they talk about their competitors. At no small time and expense to Avanta, Will did a full cast of my foot, and like where my feet got like wrapped in this like plastic bag and like mushed in and made this entire cast. It's used commonly for making orthopedics. And essentially, he was like, if you don't end up going with us, if you don't end up picking with us, most of these guys, I know them and I'm happy to send them this cast so that they can use it. They didn't talk crap about each other's products. They seem to all respect each other and the skill that they're doing. And I would say, I think that's really important when it comes to like a mutual, like group of artisans. I think it's really important and cool how they have it. But one of the really big problems is that there's just not that many people left that are kind of focused on doing this. And so there are some ways in which that they are, it's like very much a dying sport. What size Ziplocs are they using? Okay, so this is what the cast looked like at the end of it. Also, I'm in this like big chair, and this chair is from the 1930s. It's been signed by all of these skaters. But that's how different my feet look. The bag molding things is also how they mold non-human complex shapes too, like Formula One car chassis. Interesting. Okay. The pedorthist is the actual technician. I said podiatrist. I didn't know much about Big Figure before this. Well, I've done a whole thing about ISU judging reforms is outside the scope of this, but Big Figure is a real thing. So yeah. Okay. So these are the casts of my feet that were made. And let's talk a little bit about the options. Oh, I should also introduce the donut for today because I've already been going for half an hour, y'all. Okay, so this is the donut. It's a lot. It's absolutely a lot. Believe it or not, this is a donut, not like a bagel. And it is a vegan donut with a vegan patty on it and like vegan cheese and then some greens at the top. Should I go ahead and eat this? What all is in this? Okay. In the breakfast sandwich one. Unglazed donut sliced in half with sausage, egg, cheddar, dressed arugula, and sriracha aioli. It's just a lot going on there. So I guess we'll do the donut and then we'll come back to the skates. All right, so here we go. This is the donut. Why did I accidentally change what I have on there? There we go. Here's the donut. It's really a lot. I did try to heat it up a little bit, but I think I talked for half an hour, so it's not really heated up anymore. But it's like I think it's like egg patty, like a faux egg patty. It's just a breakfast sandwich, but like the tiniest hint of sweetness. It's totally savory though, because it's unglazed on the top. So it's actually kind of like more like a soft bagel, but like in a good way. I'm definitely going to rate this a 1 for abilities you eat on camera. Oh, the aioli, the sriracha aioli is in there. I don't think I'm going to be able to finish this. This is an awful lot of food. It's a lunch, though. This is just a lunch. I will say this donut is way more expensive than even their other elaborate donuts. And I have like if you buy 10, you get one free. And since I get a donut every week, I eventually get one free. And I couldn't even use it on this because it's so expensive. Okay, is it a donut is almost the question. Like, it's made by a donut method, but it doesn't taste like a donut. I give it a 3.5 or a 4. Like, if I was in an airport and this was an option, this would be a phenomenal option. If I'm seeking a donut, I would put it closer to the 3 range because it isn't really a donut. So, I don't know. But also it makes me sneeze apparently. I would say it is a 3.54 for a vegan breakfast sandwich. Is it a good donut? Not sure. Gesundheit, thank you. Nobody says that here for sneezing, and everybody says it in Cincinnati. And I only later realized that's because Cincinnati is like a very German town. But when I was growing up, everybody said Gesundheit, and I never hear it here. One donut due to the clumsiness of design. Yeah, it's not, nobody expects, I guess, to eat it as just like a, now it just looks messy though. I'm gonna have to move it out of the screen because it just looks messy in the background. All right, how much do you want me to walk through each of the skates and kind of the pros and the cons of how things are going on? I will say, when I was saying like how few people know how to do this, I asked Will, do you think there are like less than 20 people know how to make custom figure skates in the world? And he said way less than 20 people know how to make custom figure skates. So you have to appreciate just how small both the market and the amount of producers in the market is. And I think that gives some context. I honestly, when you see how much stuff goes involved into making these skates, like going out to the factory, I really started to feel almost like, wow, I'm surprised they're only $2,000 these days. Because there's a lot of different processes that go into them. So, so this was the Avanta Skate Lab, and these were some skates that were actually designed by, like, they got leathers, and all of these kids got to design these skates for Rental Skate, and I think it was for the city of Hayward. It was a city in the Bay, and so they were just so cool. So we actually got put to work and ended up helping them by unwrapping all of the skates. So this is what these looked like, because we were at the factory for a while. But this is what happens when kids get to design custom skates. I have to say, there is just such cool opportunities for figure skating, especially ice skating, to become so much neater and accessible to kids if we would lean into things like this. Like, roller skating is starting to see popularity again, and it skyrocketed during the pandemic, but it kind of keeps going in popularity right now. And one of the reasons I think it has skyrocketed in popularity so much is because it looks fun and cool and approachable. And one of the things I was really frustrated with when I was looking for skates, like, I wanted black skates, and I wasn't allowed to get black skates because my coaches were like, you'll get marked down because white is for girls and black is for boys. So I got tan skates as sort of my in-between, and then I got black blades, which at the time was like one of the only sort of colored skates blades that you could get. Now you can get them in all sorts of colors, but it was the very beginning of colored skate blades being a thing. I think it's really frustrating. What I think is really frustrating generally about all of this when it comes to figure skating is that even still, talking to a ton of these companies, even ones that had customs, they still are like only producing things in black, tan, and white. When I would go up to approach any booth, they would automatically assume, because of my gender presentation, I wanted white skates. And it's just like, if ice skating does not get with the freaking times, if we don't start to think about how to make our dying sport be fun and accessible to people, this sport is not going to have success it isn't going to find popularity because we just have this kind of dominating approach to it. So these skates actually went viral on TikTok. If you follow any skating talk, you might have found out about these. You can see the bottom of it has this special thermoplastic called Rockers thermoplastic that is colored. So that's on the sole. But this actual fabric, Will said that, he had someone come and said, oh, I want the skates to be like this. And they were like, well, we don't know where to get that leather. And she said, don't worry, I'll bring it to you. So she brought them 2 reams of this, and this ended up going viral on TikTok. They ended up like doing a giveaway for a pair of these and have made tons and tons of skates like this. This was one of the things where I went back and forth about whether or not I should think about, because those I really like. They look very fun. I could do like a different color on the bottom. However, I am hopefully joining a forming synchro team. And if we do synchro, usually you have to have all the same style of everything. Like you want to match. That's what synchronized skating is all about. And getting what they call that, those skates are Funkalicious. I feel like Funkalicious pattern might make it hard for me to do synchro. So, this is some more. This is the cat that likes to believe that he wants pets from you. So next day after I went to Avanta, I went to the SAP Center, and the SAP Center was holding the Figure Skating Nationals. One thing I was really worried about was that they said that ahead of time, all of their policies on the website said that you could only bring in a bag that was 5 inches by 9 inches by 2 inches, which was really small. And I needed to bring my skates in to show the vendors, which are already bigger than 5 by 9 by 2. My foot is wider than 2 inches. So I was really worried about it. And then I ended up catching the Caltrain from where I was staying with a friend in Palo Alto down to San Jose. And everybody there was absolutely, like the person that I caught down with was like, oh yeah, I've been there all week. They're letting people in with big bags. Don't worry about it. So I got to the venue. I was prepared to check my bag with my skates or like try to talk it in. But all I had to do was put my big bag through an x-ray, and they did not, even though they had a sign out front, they did not enforce that policy at all. So this is what it looked like inside the SAP Center. Or SAP Center, that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. But as you can see, there's kind of vendors around, but it was weirdly empty, which is once again to my point about the fact that we need to get better at making this sport more accessible. But the actual inside the venue was just gorgeous, like very beautifully done. Got to see some great ice skating. Then I got fit for these Idea boots. This did not work. These are the synthetic boots that they don't have any kind of custom options. They just would not work at all. Cheryl says, can't they match with a boot cover? Theoretically, yes, you can do a boot cover, but if you get a fun colored sole on your skates, then the boot cover can't cover that up for synchro. So this is what everybody kind of did for custom skates. Normally, you wouldn't get fit for skates ahead of deciding that you wanted to buy them, but I really appreciated that people were willing to work with me when I essentially said like, hey, I'm trying to decide what kind of skates to get. And I came down just to talk to all these vendors. And so most of them were willing to do the fitting for me and keep my info on file as I kind of talk to everyone, just so that they have the information while I kind of decide. So the first one I got fitted for was Graph. The way that most figure skates will fit you is, in addition to doing that kind of that cast, which is the really good way to do that for custom skates that you saw already, they will trace your foot sitting and then standing with pressure to kind of see how much of the spread there is. And then in addition to the foot tracings, they'll take all sorts of different measurements around your foot, around your ankle, all sorts of things like that. Take note of various different things. Because I have such pronounced bone spurs and bunions and hammer toes, they also were looking at ways that they could maybe even do things like they actually can have like a small piece of leather on the side, I'm trying to see if I have a picture of this. Um, there's like a small punch out that they can do with where they'll only have one thin piece of leather instead of the stiffness of the skates, which means that rather than like punching it out and thinning out the amount of leather on there, it's just in the place where you need that extra support. This was another one of the brands, which is Rydell, which is a big one made out of Minnesota that I mentioned. They had so many different leather options. I really didn't realize how many Rydells they make. One thing I thought was really fascinating about all of the different like customizations that they apparently will do like thermoplastic covers on the bottom. But Johnny Weir, Olympic figure skater and all-time fashion queen, wanted the bottom of his skates to be the Louis Vuitton red for the fancy Louis Vuitton shoes. But apparently Louis Vuitton was not happy with Rydell for doing that because they're like, they have like a trademark on the color or something like that. They have some sort of IP on the color being on the bottom of shoes. And so they weren't very happy about that. But generally, if they can get the color, they can do it on the bottom of the shoes. I really liked this Dusty Rose suede, by the way. So this was the Rydell who I talked to. So I can kind of talk about the difference in prices if it's interesting to people. So, I said $2,000 on this, like in the title of this live stream. That's really the high end, but when it comes to figure skates, you buy the boots and the blades separately if you're at a higher level. So pretty much everyone who traced my feet agreed that I needed to go customs. The only person that tried to convince me that I didn't is the company that didn't have any customs to sell. Graph was the first one that I looked at, and after Avanta, and theirs was priced around $780 to $150, depending on some kind of various things. They said it was going to be about 10 weeks, but one of the downsides for me is that there was no fun color options available. They said maybe if I really had a custom leather I want, they could see if they could get a color, but otherwise tan, white, black. They have a slightly different technology on how they do the boots, and I would say their boots are stiffer. SB Terry was the only one that didn't take my measurements, but that's because he knows Will really well, who is the person at Avanta who got the cast. So if I ended up deciding to go with them, Will would be happy to share the cast with him. The customs from them were about $1,100. They are the closest, in addition to Avanta, with what the older skates that I currently have. I am getting a slightly different model. I'm getting an Ice Dancer model, which will be cut lower in the back so that you can point your toes a little bit more. And I may get a slightly taller heel on the back. Jenny says, how can Louis Vuitton have trademark red bottoms of shoes when it comes from Louis 16th E of France? That's some trademark nonsense. I think Louis Vuitton being able to do that, it probably makes sense that they could have an IP on a color. I think so. Their specific color probably... Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised. That makes sense. It's really hard in general to get patents on any sort of things in fashion. So if you are trying to do your IP around that, I can understand, because they want that to be a trademark for their brand. And so they don't want cheaper shoe manufacturing companies stealing their trademark. So it makes sense that they can make a justifiable amount for it. Just because it was in historical use, if it wasn't in use by the Louis Vuitton brand, but I'm not an IP lawyer. But Jenny says, as a Canadian who doesn't figure skate, I always got black hockey skates as a kid because they would actually fit my wonky feet. I did dance and I was stuck in ugly beige shoes for years. Yeah, I mean, the hockey skates tend to be wider too, which is nice. But Yeah, I understand the curse of these. Oh, Cheryl says she's not a fan of the fun skates that I showed. I liked a lot of them, not all of them, but I liked a lot of them. Um, I really liked these leather, the teal like suede was. I really liked this one, but here's what I kind of justify. Well, Pantone colors are, that is like a color scheme. I realized I have not been putting the chat on this whole time when I click on things. I'm sorry. I don't think that Louis Vuitton has like, because Pantone is its own interpretation of colors. So yeah, I mean, I think they have whatever the shoe manufacturing color is like. Yeah, I don't know. Uh, so I could look at it like 1100 and then it's like an extra $100 if I want to, or $99 if I want to get fun leather. They're about 8 to 12 weeks out right now. Those would come out of Nashville. Rydell, I really liked the guy who fit me. His name is Dan. He clearly knows a lot about skates. He was very respectful of all of the other vendors, which I just really appreciate how kind and how small this community is. They have all these custom leathers. He showed me a pair of skates that Johnny Weir had that had his dog's face embroidered on the side of them that they just did. I will also say they were a lot more affordable than some of the other customs. So Avanta will run me about $1,950, and then it would be an extra $150 if I got that like holographic Funkalicious. If they called it. Rydell are all in for $950 customs. A lot of the custom producers will kind of have like a base fee, but then like for every type of change you make, they add on the top. Like it'll be like $50 to change the heel height and blah, blah, blah. And Rydell, it's just all in, unless he said once you get to over like 9 changes, then we might talk about maybe a little higher price, but generally it's all in. They also are ready in about 4 to 6 weeks, and those are made in Minnesota. The only downside is that they are limited exclusive to their own blades, which I thought was kind of a bummer because their blades are not exactly the blades that I want generally, but that's just if you want them to mount the blades. It's like nice to have the skate manufacturer mount the blades because you'll test them. They'll mount the blades temporarily for you. You'll test them out and then you send them back to them. And they'll let you know any adjustments because the blades get screwed on the bottom here. Let you know any adjustments, and then they'll do what's called putting snow seal on the outside. And the snow seal is a waterproofing behavior that you want to do on there, and it's best done with the blades already mounted. So I like the sparkly orange skates in one of the photos. If I had been a little girl getting custom anything for my feet, I would have wanted it to be sparkly orange. Orange is not usually my favorite, but yeah, they were. I did think those are pretty cool. The sparkly orange here. I really liked these like pink and blue ones in the back, but I'm not like a huge fan of the crocodile style leather. But yeah, I thought those were interesting. And the last one that I really looked at was Jackson's. And Jackson's are made in the US. I can't remember where they're made. Why is it failing me? I can't remember where they're made. But the Jacksons were just not that custom. They might be made in Valencia, but I'm not actually entirely sure. I don't know if that's just where the sales rep is based. They have no fun colors. They are cheaper, but the other thing I don't like about them is they essentially use a hockey tongue in figure skates. And to me, that kind of tongue, the tongue is really important when it comes to ice skating boots because it provides you with a lot of the stiffness that you need and you're bending constantly right here. So the tongue is really important. So I dreamed of orange points with green ribbons, but all I got is beige. Well, you can always take your point shoes and dye them if you get gonna be in any show where you need them dyed, right? The crocodile is what makes them look cheap. I think the crocodile, there was one that was like entirely in crocodile, and I thought it looked really good. It was like the white crocodile. Actually, I think it's in the very bottom here. It's not a very good view of it. But I actually did think this one looked cool because it looks like a traditional skate, but then like a little fun. But yeah. David says, is that Valencia, California or Valencia, Spain? Valencia, California is at least where their sales rep was, but I'm not entirely sure. Let's find out where Jacksons are made. So yeah, that's what's happening. I'm now having to decide between if I want to go for a slightly longer timeline, but like the actual factory that I visited that I know is going to be the closest to what I have, but just like slightly updated for new technology, and I can get fun colors and everything as part of it, but for a lot more money. It's $1,950. Part of that is because they are located in California. It's more expensive there than it is in Nashville, Tennessee. One of the other things that I could do would be looking at getting SB Terry, which would be very similar. Like they know each other, they respect each other. And that's the one out of Nashville, and that would be about $1,100. And then if I got fun leathers, so it would be up to $1,200. And I'm kind of choosing between Avanta or SB Terry, and then I was liking the Rydell's, and the Rydell's were cheaper. The thing is, I've never been in Rydell's before, and it isn't necessarily the exact same tech and process as the skates that I'm used to. But I will say the guy who fit me, he really knew a lot about how to work around different things on boots, and different things that go in your skates, and like weird things are happening with your feet. And I felt a degree of confidence that he would come up with creative ideas about how to handle and make sure that my feet work really well. So yeah, that's kind of the basics. The sport is not nearly as big as it once was. I think that in addition to being this very artisan skill of making custom skates, I do think that one of the things that figure skating is struggling on is this archaic, sexist, traditional judging. I mean, women ice dancers just got allowed to be able to wear, for the free dance, pants in July of 2022. Canada, just for open competition, is allowing same-sex ice dancing like a month ago, which is still not allowed at the international elite levels. Like, I think it's really worth discussing how uncool this very expensive sport is. We've had more judging scandals at the Olympics from figure skating in my lifetime than I can count. And I could count. I can count. I think it's like 8 or something, but it's a lot. I mean, we've had a lot of judging scandals, and it's the sport, I think, part of the small market for customs, part of the challenge of getting customs, I think, has to do with the ways in which the sport is failing to expand itself. There are plenty of expensive sports that don't, there's lots of places in the world where figure skating is not an expensive sport. It's a very accessible sport. It's a very accessible sport in Finland. It's a very accessible sport in Russia. It's a very accessible sport in most of the former Soviet countries. They have public rinks. Canada, it's relatively accessible, like not on the competitive level. It isn't accessible on the competitive level anywhere that it isn't state sponsored, but like Canada has lots of cheap rinks and everything. But when you come to most of the US, when you come to any parts of the global south, figure skating is just not a sport that is going to be expanding. But even amongst like teenagers, it isn't a cool sport. And then one of the problems is like Avanta said most of their customers are adult figure skaters, and that's because adults are willing to, invest in fun custom skates. They, one often have more needs to get more supportive skates. But the other thing is like their feet are not changing as much, and adults are less likely to be doing the triples and the quads that are going to break down the skates. So for adults, they're willing to invest in something like a pair of cool custom skates because they're going to last them longer. They're going to work for them longer. And that really speaks to me of like one of the reasons that skating can't expand, because it's only people that are willing to spend this much kind of discretionary income on skates that get kind of like that fun aesthetic. And I think there's a reason that we are seeing roller skating doing really well, being very successful at outreach and diversity in a way that figure skating is not. My little town is building a free indoor rink for kids under 18 to access all year round. Adults will have to pay to use it. I mean, that's awesome. And the other scandals. I mean, I can't even name all the scandals. My employer just started offering pants to women in 2022 or 2020. Whew. Do you work for a very conservative employer? I'm very curious. Pants. That reminds me of the episode of Supergirl where she got to wear pants as her costume. Rachel says, is your favorite one the most expensive option? Maybe. And the question for me is like, is it worth spending an extra like $900 to get almost like double the price really to get the right kind of skate and know that it's being made by someone who made the skates that already currently work for me? One of my fears is what's very hard about this when you're getting these custom skates is like, yeah, I could get custom skates from Rydell and it sounds good, but if they don't work, it's essentially $1,000 down the drain. So if there's a chance that can be more certain if I go with SP Terry or Avanta, the more expensive ones, but that are closer to the skate tech I'm used to, then maybe that's the worthwhile, option. So Jace says, I'm so sorry I missed everything. Well, thank you for joining. You can always watch the replay. I hope this was somewhat interesting for people. I know it's very niche. Part of it was just that this is all I did the past day, so I couldn't think of any other topics, and I'm frankly exhausted from like 8 hours of walking around the SAP center looking at skates and having... I'm not self-conscious about my feet, but you can get a little self-conscious about your feet when strangers are judging it for and tracing and discussing how weird your feet are for a bunch of hours. So, yeah. Such an interesting window into a world I know nothing about. I like stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to do. David says they also offered kilts to male employees at the same time. Interesting. All right. I'm all for the equality there. So, all right, y'all. Is anybody have any questions about custom skates or anything like that? Otherwise, I might go take a nap. I'm still a little exhausted from all the travel and talking and everything. I had a talk this morning before the live stream. Also, if you have any suggestions about what you would like me to cover next week, please let me know. I'm still, I think it might be time to do a check-in on the Chinese housing market and what's going on there, because it's a lot. But we can also talk about maybe more useful personal finance topics. Someone was asking for the difference between traditional and Roth and the advantages and disadvantages of that. So if that's something you'd like me to dig in deep about, when you should choose traditional versus Roth, what the pros and the cons of them are, I'm happy to do an entire live stream about that. Will I get a fun color? Jenny asks. I probably will get a fun color. I keep going back and forth. The big issue is, of course, with synchro. I should maybe not get fun colored skates because, especially if I want to get a fun bottom one, yeah, I think that's one of the concerns. But I feel like if I'm spending my grown adult money on these, I kind of want a fun one. Ooh, a House Files live stream. We could do a House Files live stream. David, you can just leave your questions on the House Files. I have thought about maybe we should do a roundup episode of the House Files where all we do is respond to the various comments, like in a video. So maybe we need to do that. We could do a House Files live stream. I will say we were smart, and those episodes are recorded at a different time than when you see them show up on the channel. So to give ourselves a little breathing room with putting those out. So we're a little farther out, but it's not as fun as doing it live. Show the donut for those that came late. Yeah, I still have some of it. The donut is wild. It is a vegan breakfast sandwich, savory donut. It was a lot. It has like vegan egg, cheese, a patty. It was also very expensive and has some greens in it. I also just dropped it. Okay, there we go. It assembled itself again. It was good, but it was nothing like that. I know there's still an open question for flooring cork versus bamboo. Unfortunately, yes, we are still dealing with that. I think we're pretty sure we're going to go with bamboo. Jay says, I went to England a few days ago. Ever since then, I've been tired as heck. I don't know if you live in the States, but like I find, especially the England to coming back from the West Coast, I get like super tired coming back because it's a chunk. If you're on the West Coast to England, it's like that is a big time change, big awkward time change. I hope you feel better though. My advice: sleep on local time, drink a lot of water. But yes, I agree. England is just very exhausting right now. Newbold One says this, who lives in England, so. Has the donut eating happen already? Yep. David says, I'm pro-induction if you haven't decided. Oh, we definitely decided. Yeah, we did a whole video about why we decided on that. Jay says, I live in Portland currently. Yeah, that's a tough transition between the two. There's definitely induction. We're definitely doing induction. There's no question. We're doing induction for all 3 units, actually, even the rentals. Yeah, and gas is not happening because we don't even have a gas line. All right, I shouldn't take away from the House Files content. There's no floof of the week. I bet if I opened that door, I could get a floof pretty quickly. But I guess the floof of the week was Mango, the shop cat at Avanta. So you know what? We'll make it floof of the week here. There we go. Here's our floof of the week. Mango the shop cat. Want of pets. All right, y'all. Stay safe. Look at this kitty. So cute. You're very cute. Okay. Thank you all for joining. I will see you next week. I guess I'll be talking about Roth versus traditional, or I'll talk about the Chinese housing market. But we might do a House Files live stream at some point, maybe on a Friday night, since episodes come out on Friday morning. Stay safe. Stay hydrated. Pet a cat if you have one available. And I will see you all next week. I will see you all next week. Same time, same place. Bye.